I was pushed out of my ultra-Orthodox family because of my rebellions when I was a teenager. It was overwhelming trying to figure out how to survive. I got my shit together enough to hold down a job, to make enough money to keep a roof over my head and food in my belly. But the emotional fallout, that was hell for a long time. Thank goddess, when I was 18, I got into therapy, and my therapist strongly recommended that I learn some mindfulness or meditation to help me cope with my wounds. I started going to Zazen at a nearby Zen Buddhist temple, sitting silent with my legs folded, returning to my breath again and again. I had this job at a nonprofit right near the boardwalk in Coney Island, so I started going to work early and sitting on a bench in front of the sand and meditating with the rhythm of the surf echoing the rhythm of my breath. It was powerful. The lineage of Zen Buddhism gave me a great gift. It was a big deal to slow down, to focus on what was present in that moment, instead of getting lost in the pain of what had already happened. I'm really grateful for what I learned from Buddhist community. I still use Zen meditation as part of my spiritual practice. My teacher, Reb Zalman, used to say that every faith has its own vitamins, so a person might need different combinations of faith practices to get all the nutrients they need to stay in good health. Buddhist meditation gave me some pretty essential vitamins that I'd been missing. Meditation seemed super Buddhist to me. I didn't really know that there was such a thing as Jewish meditation. I only discovered Jewish meditation when I started to re-engage with Judaism in my late 20s, when I realized ultra-Orthodoxy wasn't historically authentic Judaism, and that there were many other lineages that had different messages than the ones I'd been raised on. So I started learning Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, taking in the wisdom but spitting out the misogyny and the xenophobia that encases that tradition, which, by the way, is in itself a Kabbalistic practice. The canonical mystical text, the Zohar, says, "That which is deeply sacred is often encased in a shell of harm. We've got to crack the shell, get at the meat." Through Kabbalah, I discovered Jewish meditation, and in particular, the mystical meditative practice of the ancestor Miriam. This secret Jewish meditation practice contains vitamins that I have found very potent for navigating this painful political moment right now. In this episode, we're going to talk about the definition of wisdom, wait for what kind of salt we want to be, a concussion, descent for the sake of ascent, why you're alive in this moment, and a practice for bringing Miriam's Living Torah into our own lives. I'm Jericho Vincent, your local feminist, trans, Kabbalistic rabbi, and this is a survival guide for a spiritual wilderness. Let's continue on the path. Last episode, we witnessed Miriam exercising spiritual chutzpah to get her parents back together after they separated. Then her mom, Yocheved, has a baby boy, and the Pharaoh has issued this executive order that every newborn Ivri boy must die. We can look at the story historically, mythologically, archaeologically, or some other way, but the mystics ask us to read these ancient stories archetypically. We each have an inner Miriam, an inner Yocheved, an inner baby that at some point in our lives is going to be in the situation that this baby is about to find himself in. Yocheved knows it's only a matter of time before the soldiers come take her baby, kill him. So she decides she'd rather let nature kill her baby than let her baby die at the hands of man, and she puts her baby in a basket in the river. And then she walks away. She can't stand to be there, to watch crocodiles or waves take her child's life. Yocheved goes home to sit Shiva. But Miriam, the baby's big sister Miriam, she stays. She stays by the side of the river and remains present with her brother. She's watching him as he tips back and forth between life and death. Her mother reacts to what she assumes is inevitable. She's mourning the imminent death of her baby. But Miriam, she has this staggering capacity to be present with what is. So in the Zohar, in that canonical Kabbalistic text, it says, what is chochmah? What is wisdom? It defines wisdom by taking this ancient word for wisdom, chochmah, and cutting it in half to make two new words, Chakeh Mah, which means wait for what? Wisdom is the ability to wait for what? To accept a difficult present reality without jumping to conclusions about the future, to be calm and poised, open to what unfolds. Miriam on the riverbank, watching her brother balancing between life and death, is the embodiment of wisdom, of Chakeh Mah, of waiting for what? Waiting to see what will unfold, not reaching a premature conclusion. Cultivating curiosity. This has some similarities to the concept I learned from my Buddhist teachers of non-attachment, of a kind of disengagement from outcome. But Chakeh Mah, wait for what, has an implied expectation that action is forthcoming at the right moment. Miriam, in her Chakeh Mah, her waiting for what in this very painful situation, is an iteration of a previous archetype, many generations before Miriam. There's this family, Lot, Idit, and their two daughters. They're fleeing their cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, which God is destroying with hellfire and brimstone. Idit, Lot's wife, the girl's mother, looks back at the destruction, and what she sees when she turns to face the pain, famously, it transforms her into a pillar of salt. Long before the invention of modern psychology in the 12th century, Italian Kabbalist Rabbi Menachem ben Binyamin Recanti taught us that when we see something traumatic, even if it doesn't touch us, it can cause this echoing psychological damage in our minds. Rabbi Recanti says that's what happened to Idit. She became the salt because she was traumatized by watching sulfur and salt rain down on her city. So if we read this mythologically, we can say that the trauma of the destruction that Idit witnessed was so intense, it immobilized her. It paralyzed her. She became frozen in the pain of what she'd left behind. Miriam, like Idit, she witnesses the pain, she faces the pain, but it doesn't immobilize her. One of the many meanings of the name Miriam is Maryam, salty sea. So, like Idit, Lot's wife, when Miriam faces pain, it makes her salty, but a salty sea, not a pillar of salt. Miriam remains liquid, fluid, able to contain life. She doesn't allow herself to become frozen by the pain. How does she do that? How do we do that? How do we face the overwhelming pain of a spiritual wilderness without becoming immobilized? Yeah, we utilize our spiritual chutzpah to envision a better possibility, a better future, but while we're waiting for that to unfold, how, in the most embodied way, how do we survive the anxiety of the wilderness? Miriam shows us how, with Chakeh Mah, wait for what? It's a 3-step meditative process. The first 2 steps come from one potent line in the Torah that describes Miriam after her brother Moses is placed in the water. It says, "V'taitzav achato Merarchok l'dea ma ya'aseh lo." And his sister, Miriam, stationed herself at a distance to learn what would happen to him. V'taitzav achato, Miriam stationed herself. Taitzav, station yourself. That's instruction number 1 of Chakeh Mah, waiting for what? When we're stressed, when we're overwhelmed, we need to station ourselves, to be deliberate and make an intention to work with this difficult situation and to hold our body with attention and readiness. Now that can include a specific pose, lotus position, or nefal apay, bowing down to the ground, or go in a particular sacred place where we can best station ourselves. Whatever prepares us in an embodied way to do this work of Chakeh Mah, waiting for what? So step 1, Teitzav, station yourself. Step 2, Merarchok, at a distance. Miriam stationed herself Merarchok, at a distance, so we need to make a little distance. The 18th century mystic, the Kedushat Levi, highlights this second step, Merarchok, at a distance. He teaches that to live a spiritually awakened life, we have to be like Miriam, emulate her Torah, her wisdom, by making a little distance between ourselves and the difficult reality unfolding in front of us. That distance can create space for our curiosity. We learned the third step of this process of Chakeh Mah after step 1, Tetzav, station yourself, and step 2, Merarchok, at a distance, from the sacred text, Sefer HaYashar, which tells us that Miriam gave her little brother a name. She called him Yared, or Jared, which means to go down, because the text says Miriam went down to the riverbank to see what would happen to him. This language of Yared, going down, it's super loaded for us Kabbalists. As teacher of Kabbalah, Dr. Yosef Rosen explains,
Yarad, to go down, means to descend mythologically and emotionally, to go into a difficult, hard place. Kabbalah tells us that the very way to ascend, to rise, to overcome great difficulty is through this descent. This principle is called Yeridah L'tzorech Aliyah, descent for the sake of ascent. We go down to the depths in order to rise to the heights.
To translate this into practical terms, Miriam descends by really letting herself feel her own pain of being a child, watching her brother in this dangerous situation, her own fear, her own anxiety. And when we're being present with a part of ourselves in pain, we can let ourselves have that descent also. We can let those parts of ourselves express the true depths of their fear and their anxiety. It might feel counterintuitive, but if we're willing to bear compassionate witness to our own selves in this deep way, that's actually how we survive and even thrive in terrible situations. That's how we ultimately rise in strength and in triumph, how we find spaciousness and calm and meaning and connect deeply to love for ourselves and love for each other. And that's how we're able to ground ourselves, to be present and ultimately of service to others so that we can survive and even thrive in a spiritual wilderness. Because Miriam has this ability to Chakeh Mah, to wait for what, with step 1, Tetzav, station yourself, step 2, Merarchok, at a distance, step 3, Yared, go down, then when she sees the basket holding her baby brother floating towards the princess of Egypt, the daughter of the Pharaoh, bathing in the river, when she sees the princess reach forward to grab the basket, Miriam is in a position to jump forward and ask the princess, "Can I get you a nurse for this baby?" And when the princess says yes, Miriam runs home to her mother, who's grieving her dead son, and says, "Come with me. Your baby is alive. The princess is hiring you to be his wet nurse to breastfeed your own child." If Miriam had stood at the riverbank when her brother was put in the water, and if she'd started freaking out, screaming, crying, panicking, the Egyptian soldiers would have been alerted and grabbed her brother. They were hunting for him. If the baby came on land, it would be an instant death sentence. But Miriam waiting, not jumping to conclusions, staying present with her pain, that's what put her in a perfect position to act at the right moment. When we start to spiral, when we're facing painful uncertainty, step 1, Tetzav, station yourself. Step 2, Merarchok, at a distance. Step 3, Yared, go down. And then notice what emerges from that meditative process where we're called to act. This is a tool that we can use when we're facing catastrophic global news or small, difficult personal moments. Some years ago, when my son was 3, my daughter 10, we were up in the mountains of Colorado for the summer. My partner and I were sitting at the table, and the kids were playing a game, jumping around on the couch, and suddenly there was a loud crack sound, kind of a coconut sound. We turned and saw that our son had fallen backwards from the arm of the sofa onto the wooden floor about 2.5 feet up. He's a stoic kid. I tend to get more upset when he gets a scratch than he does, but this time it took him a very, very long time to stop sobbing. So to calm him down, we gave him some TV. We did not know that he had a concussion, and with concussion, you're supposed to avoid stimulation. About half an hour after he'd fallen, he abruptly threw up all over the floor. We called his doctor back in New York, who advised us that there was a chance that there was brain hemorrhaging, and we should take him to the emergency room as quickly as possible. We drove him to the little mountain hospital, and as I watched the doctors examining my son, as I watched him throw up again and again, I made this decision to be very deeply present, a kind of tatsav, stationing myself. When it comes to my kids' safety, like a lot of parents, I can be quick to catastrophize, but I wanted to stay present, like hyper-aware of my body in the moment, not spiraling off into what his symptoms might mean. Of course, there was a part of me that wanted to go spiraling off, so step 2, Merarchok, I created a little distance. My son was resting, the doctors were arranging a CAT scan, and I noticed this tightness in my upper chest and in my temples. I asked that sensation to unblend, to step forward so I could bear witness to it with love. And when it did, I saw this younger me. I saw this younger me sobbing and so afraid. So step 3, Yared, I went down into the depths. I'd grown up on stories of people losing children because of their sins. The ultra-Orthodox people I'd grown up with had made it very clear that they thought I was a grave sinner for thinking for myself, for pursuing a secular education, for marrying a non-Jew. And this young part of myself was terrified that I was going to lose my child. This young part of myself had already lost 10 siblings when I was pushed out of my ultra-Orthodox family as a teen, and it was afraid that now I was going to lose my son too. So I witnessed this terror. I witnessed the grief this young part of me had for what it had already lost. I felt so tender towards this part of me. It loved so deeply. It loved my brothers and sisters that I hadn't spoken to in 2 decades. And it so enormously loved my son. The pain was intense for a while, but it was clean pain, cleansing. Thank God as my kid's CAT scan came out clear, he began growing an awful lump on his head, and they wanted to observe him for a couple more hours, but it did not seem like he had a brain hemorrhage. And yes, the good news certainly shifted everything, but so did that meditative process of step 1, tatsav, stationing myself, step 2, Merarchok, making a little distance, step 3, Yared, going down. An instinct arose in that new spaciousness, this push to reach out to my community, to ask them to hold my son and, by extension, me in this situation, to ask for prayers for my son's swift healing. And it might seem small or silly, but it was important to me, and I was so grateful for the flood of prayers that came my way. I felt them traveling back in time to me at 17, when I lost my brothers and sisters, and no one was praying for me. No one even knew what I was going through because I was so isolated and alone. And there was healing in that. There was sweet and precious healing. There's many different ways to practice Chakeh Mah. Since the election, I feel like Goddess is asking me to practice it every damn day. Each time I check the news, I feel my system go into overdrive. There's this natural urge to protect myself by imagining what's about to happen next and how that's going to impact my future life. I know I have to be thoughtful and strategic about the dangers we're facing, but emotionally, I need to Chakeh Mah, to wait for what? I need to be present with what is right in front of me, not what I think is inevitable right after that. And it's challenging spiritual work to be present with this moment. Here's the thing about the future. It's not actually physically possible to live in the future. So when we try to throw our consciousness into the future, into what's about to happen, it hits that brick boundary of the now, and that impact creates this nasty wave of anxiety. So come back to the now. Come back to what we can do in this moment. Let's build our wisdom by building our capacity to Chakeh Mah, to wait for what? Chakeh Mah, waiting for what? It creates this spaciousness that allows us to pay attention for longer, to wait until it is our moment to act. And let me tell you, friends, there is a moment, many moments in this current spiritual wilderness when we will all need to act. But if we're spiraling in panic, we're going to miss them. There's a lot of pain coming at us right now. Some of us have internalized this kind of messaging that we're supposed to bear witness and keep ourselves doom scrolling as a kind of sacred task. But flicking through snapshots of human tragedy, that's not bearing witness. It's just messing with our mental health and our ability to actually help. If you don't have space in your life to do massive amounts of processing. Don't do massive amounts of bearing witness. Don't spend 2 hours a day scrolling through Instagram or refreshing the news. Don't. It won't help anyone. It'll only harm you and your relationships and have a net negative effect on the communal body. Figure out what the right amount of bearing witness is for this season of your life, and then adjust as your resources adjust. The future is unwritten, but when Goddess was looking down at the earth 20, 30, 50 years ago, she saw shit was heating up. She saw that the world was starting to go through what the Kabbalists call these really intense liberation labor pains. It's scary stuff. And she thought, okay, first I'm going to unleash a lot of Miriam energy onto this planet because the people are going to need some guidance through the spiritual wilderness. And then, okay, which pieces of myself am I going to plant in human bodies to be present on the earth to help midwife the world through this difficult transition? And she chose the part of herself that lives in you and the part of herself that lives in me. Now, does this idea that you have a role to play in this difficult time put you back in that frozen place? If yeah, let's take a breath and receive this blessing. May you be assured that there is a move for you to make. In a spiritual wilderness, we need artists, activists, students, teachers, caregivers, poets, philanthropists, volunteers. May the practice of Chakeh Mah, waiting for what, enable you to see clearly that your action is forthcoming at the right moment. May you be assured that your move is not to play Superman saving the whole wide world by yourself, just one small move that's in front of you right now. May you have the space to feel the responsibility and the honor that it is to be a member of this generation. May you find that small but real step in front of you that you're supposed to take, and may you take it. May you feel Miriam cheering you on, reminding you of your strength, celebrating you in your flawed and radiant perfection. Let's take a moment to practice some of Miriam's Chakeh Mah, wait for what, together. Step 1, like Miriam, Tetzaf, ready your body. How do you like to station your body in a posture of readiness? Take a moment, find that position. And let's lower our gaze, drop into our bodies like a handful of salt, dropping into warm water. Call to mind one element of this spiritual wilderness that's been stressing you out. One where there's some urgency, some sense of unending uncertainty. As you hold that in your mind, notice how your mind might be racing ahead to tell you what's about to happen next, to jump to what feels like reasonable conclusions. Let's take a deep breath in through the nose, out through the mouth. And let's try Miriam's second meditative instruction, Merarchok, from a distance. Where in your body do you notice your stress? Is it in your forehead, your jaw, your shoulders, your hips? And what's the feeling like? Is it tight or icy or fragile or pokey? Let's breathe a little tenderness into that place. And now ask that stressed feeling if it might be willing to give you a bit of space so you can hear it more deeply and take better care of it. Sometimes the answer is no, then you just keep breathing tenderness into the stress. But if the stress is willing to give you a little space, Ask it to move from your body to the front of you in your mind's eye. How does it appear to you? Is it a being, color, some other kind of image? Let it know that you've stationed yourself to witness it with love, that you want to make space for it as it is, without an agenda. You're really ready to Chakeh Mah, to wait for what will unfold. And then step 3, Yared, go down, go deep. Ask it to tell you more about what it's feeling. Open your heart, witness it with compassion as it expresses, in whatever way it wants, how it's been feeling and what its experience is. In keeping that compassionate distance, you can see it and love it, to remain present to it without becoming it, to listen deeply, to really listen with love. So pause my voice and take as long as it takes to be lovingly present with what it wants you to know. Notice what shifts in your inner world when you spend enough time with that Yared descending. Notice what shifts in your body. And notice, do you have any more clarity now about what action you're supposed to take in this moment of uncertainty? Last episode, we planted some Miriam energy in our belly, acknowledging that Miriam energy, that wise guide within us all. So now let's put your right hand, the hand of compassion, on your belly and draw forth a stream of that indigo Miriam energy and offer it to those parts of you that have been feeling so stressed. Let them know that this is ancestral energy. This is an energy of strength and spaciousness and love. Watch, Chakeh Mah, wait for what? Watch and see what unfolds. How does this part of you, that stressed out part of you, how does it want to interact with this offering? I want to pray for us, for you, my friend, for all the parts of you, and for me. I pray, Mora Miriam, Ancestor Miriam, thank you for the gift of your wisdom. Thank you for the gift of your presence. Thank you for the gift of us being in community amidst the wilderness of this moment. Please help us feel your love. Please help us connect to our own strength. Please give us the discernment to bear witness to Tzav, to station ourselves with intentional embodiment. And please give us the discernment to know what our role is, when we're supposed to act, and how. Let's place our hands on our belly again. First, the right hand of love, and over it, the left hand of strength. And let's feel that seed of Miriam energy there grow a little larger, and feel it begin to sprout roots that begin to move down into your seat, anchoring you in this uncertain time. Next time you notice yourself getting overwhelmed by the world, take a moment to remember you have this tool of Chakeh Mah, of waiting for what? Step 1, Teitzav, station yourself. Step 2, Merarchok, at a distance. Step 3, Yared, go down. Okay, so you've got your spiritual chutzpah fired up. You're using your meditative tool, Chakeh Mah, for the difficult moments. But what are you supposed to do when you come face to face with a dangerous, harmful person?
This kind of person is pretty ubiquitous in a spiritual wilderness. And Miriam has some super provocative wisdom to share about how to deal with this. I'm going to warn you, you might find it activating, but it's powerful stuff, and I'm excited to explore it with you next time.
I'm Rabbi Jericho Vincent, and I'm so excited to take this trip with you, guided by the ancestor Mora Miriam. This is a survival guide for a spiritual wilderness. I'll see you on the path.
Walk with me together through this wild and stormy land. Walk with me, my friend, together. Reach out and take my hand. Open up your eyes to the sunlight. Open up your heart to the sun. Listen to the drum beat so steady. Together we can overcome. Take my hand and together we will walk down this winding road. Look around and together we won't fear what we don't know. Open up your eyes to the sunlight. Open up your heart to the sun. Listen to the drum beat so steady. Together we will overcome. Walk with me together as we cross this beautiful land. Walk with me, my friend, together, all of us, hand in hand.
Thanks to the Kanfei Edges group, my creative partner Ben Blum, Mora Miriam for her guidance, Ruach HaOlam, the oneness within, between, and beyond us all. Survival Guide for Spiritual Wilderness is part of the Judaism Unbound family of podcasts with support from Lippman Kanfer Foundation for Living Torah.